they're supposed to be sealed under a certain pressure thing, it's better to not change them, to be quite frank.
Worked out well.
All right. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Ellsworth School Board special meeting. We're going to have this meeting in before our workshop tonight. So please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Communications and correspondence, Dan?
I have none.
Any public participation can be sent to Elizabeth Altieri at ealteri@ellsworthschools.org. Do you have any?
I do have one that just came in just a minute ago.
Okay.
This is from Mary Martell, 5th grade teacher at EEMS.
Okay.
This email is being shared as an educator, not the EEA president. These are my feelings and insights alone. I have been teaching since September to the in-person, hybrid, and fully remote students every day, all day. In 5th grade, we don't have the luxury of a fully remote teacher as grades K through 4 and 7-8 have had. I am 100% in favor of the proposal to bring kids back full-time. I am, however, not in favor of offering the fully remote option. We need our kids back in school in person with a teacher, interacting and engaging in face-to-face discussions and learning. To continue that option is not the best interest of all kids, let alone the immense load it adds to our teachers' responsibilities. If we adopt this plan, I hope that there will be remote-only teachers hired to take over that responsibility.
Thank you, Beth. Thank you, Mary. All right, so item E, new business. Discussion and consideration of spring athletics. Mr. Frost.
Good evening. Thanks for putting me first on the agenda. I thought I'd start tonight just with a quick recap on how winter sports have gone and some that are still going. So our indoor track team were able to participate kind of in a virtual format, running the distance events such as the 800 and the mile. They were able to do that on our home track. I got out there a few times and was able to snow throw a bunch of snow out of the way, at least keep one lane of the track open. So they were able to run in those meets and compare their times with other schools until the championship meet. We also added high jump competitions in local school gyms and in other jumping contests that were virtual until the championship meet. And we had a lot of kids successful in those. So indoor track, while it wasn't a typical indoor track season, we gave them something, and the kids were thankful for that. Swimming and diving, the students competed again in virtual swim meets. So they swam all their home meets right here at the Down East Family YMCA. The girls team finished as the PVC runner-up when we did the championship meet. Again, they basically took their times, compared them to other schools, and then obviously established the points and things. And when all was said and done, the girls team finished as the runner-up. This is the best finish ever by the girls team. So, and we're only losing 3 seniors, so we're really looking forward to next year. And the boys team actually finished third out of, I believe there was 8 or 9 boys teams. And that's with only 5 boys on the team. So again, that's something to be really proud of as well. Our basketball teams, the girls varsity basketball team was able to get 12 regular season games in. They finished as the 4 seed and we're hosting John Bapps in the quarterfinals in the playoffs. We beat them. And then they went on to play Old Town and lost there, but again had a great season and able to get through some games. The boys team also played 12 regular season games, finished as the number 1 seed, and made my nights kind of going into March very busy by hosting the quarterfinals against MDI, Old Town in the semifinals, and the Class B PVC final with Orono, obviously winning all the way through there, and then going to Brewer and playing in the PVC A versus B matchup. So also to note, the JV boys and the JV girls basketball teams both won the Hancock County Championships. So it was a very, very, very busy basketball season. Cheering, again, same thing, all competitions were virtual, which made it difficult for the girls to compete. And by that, what I mean is with cheering and even with swimming and indoor track, you're used to competing and having fans cheer you on and everything else and watching the other teams do their routines for cheering, and that didn't happen this year. They basically performed for a camera 3 times. So it was very difficult to try to get that kind of hyped up and whatnot. But they had a great season. They competed in the Ellsworth Invite, something that I just threw out to ADs as another opportunity to compete. And then the PVC Championship in late February, and they placed second as runner-up in the PVC, which is a great accomplishment. And just last Thursday, they recorded their cheering routine, and we'll find out the results of that on this Saturday when they air it at 4 o'clock. So we don't know, but they had a great season, and looking forward to those results on Saturday. In wrestling, as you know, that was one of the sports that we were not able to kind of follow through with. We were able to hold 2 weeks of conditioning practices towards the end, and obviously before the state and the MPA acknowledged that they would not be able to have wrestling meets. I do want to publicly give special recognition to Matt Reed and Noah Hughes, who most likely this year, as long as they didn't have an injury, season-ending injury, would have reached their 100th win. So congratulations to both of those seniors that are going off to big and better things next year. Esports, if you remember, we started an esports team. Very cool about esports. We were working with grant money. We were able to start this program. We have students that typically wouldn't come out for an athletic team that are coming out for the esports team. This team is coached by Jason Melvin, who's a high school teacher. We currently have about 12 students that are participating on this team. They meet on Tuesdays and Thursdays and play in different games, League of Legends and Rocket League. The League of Legends team is a regional team, so they're playing teams up and down the East Coast. Our first match 3 weeks ago now was against a team in Georgia, and it was very intimidating because it was a huge school in Georgia. We did not win. That's okay. But and then the Rocket League is an in-state team, so we're playing other Maine high schools. And this Thursday we go against the MDI Trojans in Esports, so we have a new rivalry there starting. So it's kind of neat to see that going, and it's also great to see these kids, that you typically may not see on a field or in a gym coming out for something like this. So. Unified basketball started last week, which we're really happy about. We got that finally going. Was able to get some gym time for that program. We have about 20 students that are playing, which is a huge number. We're really excited about. We currently have a home and an away game scheduled with Brewer. They also just started. So we're looking at going to Brewer on April 12th and hosting Brewer on April 5th. And that program will finish up just the Wednesday before vacation. So we're really excited about that, and you should have seen all the smiles in the gym. It was like seeing your old friends again in the gym, and it was just, it made your day. And lastly, volleyball, currently playing actually right now in Bucksport. We had almost 30 girls come out for volleyball, because typically volleyball is in the fall. So we did have some girls that are kind of in between seasons and wanted to try it out. So we did create 3 teams. We have a JV2, a JV, and a varsity team. They have a 10-match schedule. After tonight, they'll have 3 matches left. So they finish off next week. And then they're looking at having a playoff kind of tournament thing with the large schools in the PVC starting April 7th. So it was a very busy winter. And because of that, I want to publicly, again, give some thank yous. So a lot of help this summer. Jen Berry and Franklin Brown ran the live stream cameras for all the basketball and indoor track, high jump competitions and swim meets. And again, because we weren't able to have parents in these facilities, it was very important that worked, and it worked well, and they both were amazing. Amy Pooler and Lindsay Corson for doing the basketball scorebooks. Monica McAndrews and the other volunteer swim timers. Lori Fortier for doing the basketball clock. We calculated that she did about 45 games in less than 7 weeks. So, and now she's doing volleyball. That doesn't count what we've already done for volleyball. So it was, like I said, it was, 45 basketball games in less than 7 weeks is busy. Our custodial staff at EHS, again, setting up the gym, making sure we're set up on time, disinfecting the chairs between the games, and then putting it all away. Just want to thank them. Our coaches for providing our students a chance to play. Certainly a season like any other, and hopefully not like any other going ahead. And then finally, thank you to our parents for their support. I know it wasn't easy. I was a parent. I have 2 6th graders that played basketball for the middle school team, and again, not being able there to watch them in person, it was difficult. So thank you for their support and cheering us on at home. So with that being said, if there's no questions about the winter, I'll jump right into spring. Okay. So spring, I think, is pretty easy. I actually always look forward to spring coming out of winter because, not that it's less teams, it's about the same number of students participating on all the teams, but it's outside, and it just gives us a chance to try something different. So some of the general guidelines, first of all, spectator guideline is changing, as most of you know. Effective March 26th through May 23rd, outside, you can have up to 75% of permitted occupancy, and then effective May 24th, basically, it's 100%. And again, that's staying 6 feet apart still in those spaces, but we feel like that will allow us to basically have everybody that wants to be at a baseball game or a softball game there, because again, you're talking about a huge space, and just making sure people know where they can and can't stand is just the more important part. All spring athletes will have to wear a face covering at all times. If able, home events will be live streamed on the EHS YouTube channel. And in parentheses, I put kind of like that will be a challenge this year because we don't have Wi-Fi in the exact locations. We have the supplies and materials to do that. It's a matter of getting it up and going. Try live streaming a home track meet when you have 7 or 8 different events going on at the same time is nearly impossible. So again, the good thing is we can allow spectators to be there. So hopefully they come and enjoy the nice weather. Hand sanitizer available at facilities at all times, and transportation will be provided by obviously the ESD to and away events. Same bus procedures are being followed just like as if they were in the morning and afternoon runs. And the biggest hiccup this spring is going to be that's obviously going to be a problem trying to get kids to where they're supposed to be, allow them to play their after-school activities, and then get them home, and trying to do that all before it's dark. So, I mean, as you know, as we're talking about moving back to school full-time, we're talking about multiple bus trips and runs. So we are getting creative with the schedule. We're looking at, now I used to be able to send softball and baseball together to play, for example, Herman at 4:30. Now we're looking at playing baseball at 4 and maybe softball at 5. So it will allow maybe that bus to drive up to Herman, drop off baseball, get back, take up softball, and go from there. So that's the biggest hiccup and challenge this season. We'll be doing that, along with, something like outdoor track where we're not sure how many athletes we'll have. We may be looking at multiple buses for a team to go to an event. The good thing with tennis is they usually travel together, boys and girls, and you only have 7 boys and 7 girls, maybe a couple of alternates, so they can all fit on one bus and go to wherever they're going. So it will be kind of a different thing with transportation, but we'll work through it. So let's talk about sport-specific guidelines, and these are the same in the middle school as they are at the high school. The biggest difference is middle school doesn't have tennis, but they do have baseball and softball and outdoor track. So starting with baseball, softball, arm conditioning started this week. We are holding off to start either tomorrow or Thursday, but next week we can start tryouts and getting into the batting cages and things like that. We tentatively have 16 games scheduled with a statewide MPA-sponsored playoffs at the end, which has been different than all the other seasons because things are loosening up and things are opening up, that the state, again, obviously this can all change, but the state right now feels like come, the beginning of June, we can offer statewide, heel point tournaments. So modifications to the sports of baseball and softball. Extending the dugout to allow for 6 feet between athletes, just like we did in the winter season and in the fall, like making sure kids have a space to sit 6 feet apart when they come off the field. So you're looking at extending those dugouts, not creating necessarily new dugouts, but seats outside the dugout. The good thing is with softball, they're behind a fence. At the middle school, they're also behind a fence. Baseball at the high school is in front of the fence. So we're going to create a boundary, kind of an out-of-bounds line, that if there's an overthrow, that's now out of bounds and whatnot. For baseball, the home plate umpire will be located behind the pitcher. That's something a little different. Typically, they're standing right behind the catcher. And so this year, they'll be behind the pitcher. Softball actually will be behind the catcher, but they're going to be 6 feet behind the catcher. And the biggest reason for that is if that umpire was to test positive a day or two later, then obviously the catcher would have to go into quarantine, and then any batter that would have to came up would also be in quarantine. So they're trying for that not to have to happen. And the difference between baseball and softball is in softball it's a smaller field, so the ball comes at you faster And I'm not picking on the umpires, but there's a lot of older umpires, so to move out of the way on a softball field would be very difficult. Switching out game balls frequently, no seeds, no spitting. That baseball has seeds, but again, not this year. Pitchers cannot lick fingers. Instead, they're encouraged to use like a damp cloth, maybe they would put in their back pocket. It's just something that they use to kind of get the grip of a baseball and softball. Sanitizing equipment and frequently, and for softball, no gathering in the pitcher's circle. So sometimes you'd see them kind of throw the ball around after an out, and all come in and kind of slap gloves and then go back to their positions. It's just they're encouraging you not to do that this year. Outdoor track. So we're hoping to start April 5th. If the weather cooperates, and I only add that little bit because if you saw the forecast for Monday, we'll see. Hopefully it goes out to sea, but 12 to 18 inches of snow is not fun on the first day of spring sports. But
that's me.
yeah, it is. Yeah, look at today and then yeah. So tentatively we have 5 regular season meets scheduled. We're set to host 3 of those, so they'll only be traveling to 2 others. Along with the PVC championship and finishing the year with a state championship. Modifications to the sport. So there are fewer teams at meets to comply with the outdoor gathering limits. Typically on a Saturday, we may host up to 10 teams coming to the track. This year it's half that. Using the odd lanes when running events that runners stay in their lane. And then teams bringing their own throwing equipment and batons. And then finally tennis. We're planning to start on Monday, this coming Monday. Morning practices. They've always started at the Ellsworth Tennis Center. In the first 2 to 3 weeks, they'll be inside at the tennis center from 6 to 7:30 a.m. in the morning. They'll be outside when they can get outside, but depending on whether they'll be inside to begin with. Tentatively, we have 12 tennis matches scheduled with, again, statewide MPA sponsored playoffs for the end of the season. And finally, modifications to the sport. The home team will change the scorecards. Usually you would flip whatever your score is, but just the home team's responsible to flip the scorecard. No pre or post match handshakes. It may be just taking your tennis racket and tapping each other. Great job. And then one I thought you'd like, that players may not wipe their sweat with the tennis ball this year. So no taking a tennis ball and wiping the sweat off your forehead. I didn't know that was a thing, but apparently that's a thing. That happens, yeah.
Some of these things would probably stay.
Yeah, that probably could, yeah.
From here going forward, please refrain from wiping your sweat
Yeah.
with the tennis ball.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's the gist. Like I said, I feel like spring is pretty easy moving forward with. We're back outside, which is nice. And then obviously have all these modifications and guidelines to follow that the MPA has put out, so. Any questions?
Excellent.
No, thank you.
I'm
Very
assuming in the stands you guys will like mark where people can be and
Yeah, yep,
that stuff,
yep,
yeah.
absolutely. Yep.
Super.
Very well
Excellent.
thought out plans.
Thank you very much,
Thank you.
Josh.
Thank you.
Yep.
Appreciate it. Any discussion?
I think just big
Entertain a
shout out
motion.
to those 2 wrestling seniors,
Yeah,
Right.
absolutely.
Matt Reed and Noah
Congratulations.
Hughes. That's so awesome and so sad all at the same time.
Absolutely.
I know.
Very
So
difficult.
big applause and shout out to them for the work that they put in over there.
Absolutely. Yep, agreed. All right. I'm going to make a motion to approve participation in spring athletics for 2020-2021, consistent with the school sports guidance, general guidance and requirements for community sports activities revised March 12th, 2021, and the Maine Principals Association guidelines for return to participation as recommended by the superintendent, EHS, and EEMS building administrators.
I second that motion.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Josh. All right. Item 2, under new business, is discussion and review of board communication to legislators. Thanks, Josh.
Thank you,
Have a good
Josh.
night.
So, I was tasked at our last meeting with drafting a message to the legislators that would express our goal of, would express our, ask them to help us achieve our goal of getting students back into session full-time in person. And so the challenge for me was trying to figure out, and I just sent the what I ended up writing, but if you can just, probably should have waited a minute, and I'll pass out hardcovers of it. But I just want to explain what went into the thing you just received before you start reading it.
Yeah, that's fine.
So the challenge for me was coming up with a request that I felt would be effective. And by effective, I mean a request that the legislators would be likely or possibly, would possibly be willing to agree to and act upon. And I asked for some guidance from Jen. We talked about this a little bit, about how to craft the message and what the message would say. But I really kept coming up against the, I guess, obstacles of, like, first of all, I feel like our two legislators have limited power to do anything on the state level to help us here in Ellsworth on this particular issue. I didn't feel like it would be worth asking them to advocate for taking away the governor's emergency powers that were given to her to declare a state of emergency and to then persuade the rest of the rest of their caucus to overrule what the Maine Department of Health and Human Services was telling us to do about this. So, and their caucus holds the majority of seats in both houses. So that didn't seem like that was going to fly. But I still pursued this idea because I want to see, well, what else could I do? What else could I ask them? So I actually talked to both of them, Louis Lucchini and Nicole Grahofsky, and I said, you know, what can we ask you to do? And I didn't want to go beyond just like a symbolic ask, like make some big statement, but knowing that it's just a symbolic act, not something that could really result in any meaningful change. And we really couldn't come up with much. Both of them, each of them, I talked to them individually, not together, but they each, recommended that these kind of decisions are coming from not only the governor's office, but really the Department of Health and Human Services. And so then, but I had good talks with them, and they both fully support, what we want to achieve, and they both fully understand that, the health and safety guidelines that prevent disease transmission, that there's some consequences to these that are that affect the emotional and mental health of our student population. And as many people have advocated, there is a need to balance these two things. Because when you're talking about health and safety, there's different aspects to that, and certainly mental and emotional health are very important, especially, and it's important to all of us in this room and all of us on the board and to Dan and the administration. So they understand that fully, and their hearts are really breaking for what some of the families are struggling with. So anyway, I had great conversations with them. Then I went to Steve Bailey, who's the executive director of the Maine School Board Association, and asked him, Steve, what's your organization, what are you recommending and what do you think? And we had a great talk, but he said he would write the letter to Jean Lambrew, who's the commissioner of the Maine Department of Health and Human Services. So that's what I did. I wrote it to her, and I'll pass around a hard copy to each of you. You have an email copy that we can
Thank you.
work on together.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And first of all, I'll stop right there and ask, did I correctly fulfill what I was tasked to do? I know it's not exactly what I was tasked to do, right? And I fully understand that, but I just couldn't find a way to write a message to our legislators that would be meaningful. So I went with this instead. I mean, the message itself could be, we can certainly copy them. And in fact, Louis, when I talked to him again this afternoon, he said, yeah, I mean, you can copy us on this, but, and copy the governor, and copy, Dr.
So it could be
Shaw.
sent all-encompassing,
Right.
just to
Yeah,
her.
but really, this is where the decision is being made at the level of
It
the
is,
commissioner. And even there, I know she's basing her guidelines on what's coming from the US CDC. So I think, and I can read this letter so the public will know what's in it, if you'd like. This is addressed to Jean M. Lambrou, PhD, Commissioner, Maine Department of Health and Human Services. Dear Commissioner Lambrou, first of all, thank you very much for all you have done to promote the health and safety of all Mainers during the coronavirus pandemic. The people of our state owe you and your department a debt of gratitude for your commitment to a science-centered approach to health policy. I'm writing today on behalf of the Ellsworth School Board to ask if you can see a way forward to allow students in kindergarten through grades 12 to maintain a distance of 3 feet while eating. Last week, the US CDC issued revised guidelines that permit young people, under certain circumstances, to be 3 feet apart rather than 6 feet, provided they are wearing masks. This leaves school lunch as the one major limiting factor for many school districts, ours included, in achieving the goal of returning to full-time in-person instruction for those families that want it, as opposed to the hybrid model under which we currently operate in Ellsworth. We as a board understand that your guidance on this issue is based on the current scientific consensus around coronavirus transmission and what is in the best interests of public health. We only ask that you recognize the emotional and mental health needs of Maine's student population when weighing the risks of physical distancing and mask wearing during meal times, and balance these with the overall health risks to our population at large. Respectfully, and then I signed each of our names underneath it with our titles.
I think it's excellent.
Thank you.
I like
Thank you.
that you pinpointed something to work on, really, with the lunches.
Yeah, because when Paul and I talked, it was, where are those limitations that we come up with when we look at just our district alone? And Paul had a really good article that he shared with me that was based on a lot of research that's been coming out recently, and obviously the changes with the US CDC currently haven't changed in the state of Maine, but we don't know. They seem to change rapidly.
Very rapidly, yes.
So in knowing that, I think that was very well done. Yeah.
I agree.
Yep. And I was going to say, I appreciate the fact that you went kind of above and beyond the ask to really get to the purpose of what we want, we're trying to do, what we are hoping to do, and what we're looking for, rather than just a symbolic, hey, we're here, don't forget about us, but nothing is going to be impacted. I appreciate that you kind of went beyond just the basic of what you could have done. And I think that you're right. I think it going here is going to have more impact than it going to our legislators, especially if we can do it kind of all together.
Good job, Paul.
Oh, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you all.
Yes, and I highly appreciate that last part. We ask you to recognize the emotional and mental health as well, in addition to the scientific health that we're talking about more frequently.
Right.
Yeah, I agree. I think it doesn't hurt to send this and show our, concerns or what we're struggling with in our own district, and then it's a voice that needs to be heard, and then we can, see if we get a response, or if other districts decide that that's something that they would be encouraged to do as well.
Mhm.
And I can say, I would concur with all of you. I think it was very well done. A lot of thoughtfulness and a lot of research went into it. I can tell you that other districts are looking at the 3-foot piece for lunch as one of the most significant barriers. It's not limited just to Ellsworth. I think Paul has put that in here, but
Yeah.
this may create an impetus for other districts to
Yeah.
do something similar.
Yeah, I
Dan,
agree.
could you share this with other superintendents?
If the board would like me to, I'm happy to do that.
Yeah.
I'll also share it with Steve Bailey, because he was, he recognized very clearly that now that we have a 3-foot rule for everything else, wearing masks, that really changes, there are now opportunities for districts to, and every district is different, and every building is different, and classrooms and so forth,
Yeah,
but
for sure.
it seems like now we may be able to find ways to get kids back in to a classroom. But the one limiting factor, as Steve pointed out to me, was that it's lunchtime. How do you do lunch?
There's
You
only
can
so
do
many
everything
minutes
else,
in a
and you
day.
might have
Yeah.
to,
I'm sorry.
yeah, you might have to
Yeah.
do some special things
Yeah.
in some of the other, in some classroom settings, but with lunch, it's like, that's the one big thing, so.
Yeah.
All the plans that were discussed at last night's committee meeting, if you eliminate a portion of the lunch challenge from that, I think it makes the planning that our folks are doing a little easier.
It does, it does.
But
So-
certainly, if the board wants, I know Steve Bailey, and MSBA and MSSA and MSMA have shared those types of things statewide. I can certainly, if you direct, or ask me to, share it with the Hancock County superintendents as well.
I don't see why not.
I think that's a wonderful idea.
In fact, if you'd like to make that part of your motion. And
Okay.
again, I put a motion down there for you because, the ask, I guess that's the word of the night, the ask of Paul was something for the local legislators. So I drafted it in that sense. So you may
Yes.
want to consider modifying that
Yeah.
recommended motion to reflect
Commissioner.
how you want to do it with Commissioner Landrieu, local legislators, and I think Paul mentioned a number of people that you might consider. But I think the structure of the motion would serve your needs. Just
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if we should send this to the CDC, too.
Well, the CDC actually operates under the
DHHS.
the oversight of the DHHS, so
think
it's
it would
in
get
effect
better.
going
Mhm.
to the CDC when you send it to the commissioner.
Gotcha.
That's the way I interpret it anyway.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to approve the written communication as presented and authorize the board chair to send to local legislators, Steve Bailey, the Commissioner of the Maine Department of Health and Human Services, and for Mr. Higgins to share this with local superintendents.
I'll second that motion.
Kelly, can I just make sure, because I need to write slowly to make sure it's neat.
Sure.
So, local legislators.
Yep.
The MSBA Executive Director, Steve Bailey.
Yep.
Commissioner Landrieu,
Yes.
and local superintendents.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any discussion? All those in favor? 5-0.
Excellent.
Thank you very much, Paul.
Yes, thank
You're
you,
welcome.
Paul.
Thank you.
Very well done.
Good work.
Item 3, consideration of PEPG Steering Committee recommendation.
Yep. And you've got a memo, this is from the PEPG Steering Committee, which met and talked about teacher evaluation. Certainly in the pandemic year, there were concerns about how that process would move forward. Committee met on a couple of occasions, had very thoughtful discussions, and are coming forward with a recommendation to do a couple of things. One is to eliminate the student learning objective, which is a database measurement. There was a belief, and I support that belief, that given the challenges of the pandemic, hybrid learning, remote learning, combined with in-person learning, would make that not a valid or reliable measure. So it would be to eliminate that for this year. Move forward with 2021 with probationary teachers following the guidelines as presented in the system, continuing contract teachers receiving one observation, completing a self-reflection, and having a post-observation conference with their administrator, which will involve feedback and completing evaluation summary page. And all completed while implementing a common sense approach and utilizing the rubric as currently written. And the common sense approach is based upon not penalizing any of our staff for things that are out of their control. There are some factors in there that talk about attendance of students and things of that nature. Those aren't things that our staff members have control over. So, and the third piece is to reconvene the committee over the summer to discuss the program and look forward. And again, the members of that committee were Lori Johnston, grade 6 teacher, Heather Ford, HCTC academics teacher, Jane Stackpole, EEMS GT teacher, Jeannie Kell, grade 2 teacher, John McKechnie, science teacher at the high school, Dan Clifford, principal at the high school, Rebecca Wright, assistant principal at the high school, Erica Gabinelli, middle school principal, and myself. And I would note that Dan Clifford, Rebecca Wright, and I believe Lori Johnston were all part of the original committee. So it was really a healthy, thoughtful discussion, and I think they were pleased to send this recommendation to the board.
I recommend a motion that we approve the recommendation of the EPG Steering Committee as presented.
I'll second that.
All those in favor? Oops, any discussion first, I'm sorry. Any discussion? All those in favor?
You were just anticipating the level of discussion that would follow.
Item number 4, consideration of requests for unpaid leave, and this has a potential executive session. We have 2 requests there, and then there's a potential executive session for item 5 as well. So it would be my recommendation that we go into executive session for these items.
I agree.
I know this might be a little cumbersome, but my recommendation would be, you've got 3 items, 2 under item 4 and 1 under item 5, each that have the potential for it. Even though it's a little cumbersome, and we would want to let our public know that when you come back from executive session, there's probably going to be a 2-minute lag before the feed comes back on. But I would recommend that you do them individually.
Individually.
Do one, have the session, come back out, and take whatever action you're going to take. It is a little more cumbersome, but I think for protocols and procedures, it makes the most sense.
It does.
Okay.
I'm just wondering, in our workshop then, Dan, is there anybody that can be excused
Well, I
from
was
the
going to say,
evening?
our administrators who are here tonight, they do not need to be here for the budget portion of the workshop. I don't think they need to be here for the other item either.
Yeah.
And by the way, I think that item is extremely well done. I think that'll be easy.
Okay.
But if the board is comfortable, I would think that our administrators would appreciate the opportunity to depart.
Absolutely.
Right?
I think that would be
Folks,
good.
we're not kicking you out, but
Stay as long as you'd like.
We'd like to release you from your pain.
And then the other members, if you don't mind stepping out, we can certainly have you come back in. Does that sound good?
I would say once the executive session is voted, you can leave now. But for
But if you want to be here for the